Welcome to the Women's Money Wisdom Podcast. I'm Melissa Joy, a certified financial planner and the founder of Pearl Planning. My goal is to help you streamline and organize your finances, navigate big money decisions with confidence, and be strategic in order to grow your wealth. As a woman, you work hard for your money, and I'm here to help you make the most of it. Now, let's get into the show. Hello, and welcome back to the Women's Money Wisdom Podcast. Today, we're going to be talking all about the role of the family's chief financial officer. And we're not talking about the CFO in a corner office. We are talking about the CFO of your household. You're the one who may remember when the property taxes are due. You know where all the insurance policies are and when you pay those premiums. You schedule the appointments. You're interfacing with the financial advisor. You're keeping track of everything. That person came up for me in client conversations this week, and I thought it was great to bring it up on the podcast today too. And I'll tell you, it wasn't only women who were describing themselves in this role. I had a prospective client who is male, who was talking about how, they're really kind of running the money in the family. And it was his wife's preference that, they keep it that way, that she isn't as interested in being responsible for the money aspects of the family. Same thing in another meeting with an existing client where we were talking about the family with both spouses in the room, and the wife is really the one who keeps track of everything. And we were actually having a meeting with her, which we'd already met with her in the past, and her spouse, getting everybody up to speed on how they're doing when it comes to the money. But, one of the things that it reminded me of as I was having both of those discussions and just reflecting on the irony that we had them both all in one day is what burdens that role has, what value you can have by switching things up and changing the communication channels. And I was just reflecting on the role of the family CFO and thinking that it was worth having a conversation here on the podcast about it. So first of all, I just wanted to define some of the things that I see when it comes to families and having a chief financial officer. So in many families, the conversations coming in are, here's my role and here's their role. And so in some cases, everybody is kind of a collaborative, let's say a co-op where everybody is really invested and shared in joint decision making. But in so many cases, both based on life experiences, personal interest, what you are bringing to the table, or also just by default based on, just the reality of the modern American family is there just isn't enough time. So sometimes it's divide and conquer. The reality is that you have probably fallen into habits where you each have divisions of labor when it comes to finances. And so here's some of the things that I see. Sometimes I see families where one person has more affinity or interest in investing. And so they may really take on the investing hat or responsibility while somebody else is like making sure there's enough money in the accounts, paying the bills. Sometimes that financial role is all rolled up into one person. And of course, this is a Women's Money Wisdom podcast. So I'm probably, I might have different cohorts than the average American family, but I see a lot of that division of labor being divided both amongst women and men, as I've already mentioned to you. And then I would also mention that in some cases you're a single person household in many cases. And, looking at that list, you may have things that you know how to do and feel confident in, and other things where you're like, I just am not going to pick up the phone and know how to, have a conversation with an estate planner very easily. And for those people as well, this conversation is very relevant of just thinking about, are you fulfilling the duties of the family CFO because you are by default your CFO, and where are the hidden pain points? So anyway, I just will mention again that I think a good thing to reflect upon as you're listening to this conversation is, what are the roles in your household? If you're single, which roles do you embrace and which roles are just kind of an eye roll and a pain in the butt? If you are in a partnership, then is everything wrapped into one? Are you a collaborative and co op? Or has someone taken over the investment side, someone taken over the cash flow side? But then as we pivot, I want us to think about that role and what may or may not be working. And to begin with, I want to acknowledge that there can be a hidden cost to having the responsibility in the role. Of course, if you're like me, like to be the decision maker, really feel more comfortable when you're in control, it can feel like, no, this is a relief because I am making sure that all the bases are covered. And there's also a lot of invisible work required to be that chief financial officer for your family. When you think about what that mental load might be, you've got, oh my gosh, did I remember to pay that premium? Was that reimbursement submitted? We've got to get our tax documents together. Where are they? Can you go grab this one or that one? Maybe coordinating benefits when you don't have them all under your job, thinking it ahead and planning a vacation, but also making sure that you can afford it. Also, the burden of thinking about caregiving for parents and or adult children, when you carry the burden of making sure that's all working kind of on your own, because not well, in some cases it may be just like, hey, I don't want that job from your partner, and in other cases it may just be by habit or default. That can be an invisible backpack that's weighted down with a lot of stress or anxiety or need for extra exertion of energy that may not be working for you the way it did in the past. There could be decision fatigue or just a lingering, kind of list of unresolved things that remain on your to do list and aren't getting done. And so I don't know if anyone else hears that, echo of like, oh, this really resonates for me. But I know that it has the potential to be out there, and I've had those types of discussions with families in the past. And I just thought it was a time to make space and time to acknowledge that what has worked in the past may not always work forever. And sometimes it's a good time to bring the other family member into the conversation, and or add a financial professional to the conversation as well. Of course, I'm biased, but that's often what I'm doing. And in both of those conversations that I just discussed and described from just this week, that was something that really the family member who was wearing the financial hat was asking for, of like, hey, can you prove to my partner that we're doing a good job in one case? And in the other case, there was an acknowledgement like, hey, I know if I weren't here, I would be concerned. And we've discussed this as a family about my making sure that my spouse is prepared for managing things financially. I want another person in the room that knows everything going on and what we're building toward, so that we know we're prepared in case something goes bump in the night. So when you're thinking about the roles that you've established in your household, can you then spend some time thinking about where the hidden risks may be of the decisions and how they're being made in the family unit right now? So, is there a lot more knowledge in one area of money than others? And maybe are you taking undue risks, concentration risk, or that list of things that hasn't gotten done keeps getting longer because you just don't have the time? And that could be an area where, when someone only one person holds all the knowledge, you may be exposed. The other thing is you may, especially as this, I find this as you're approaching retirement, what's worked for you in the past may not be working in the future. As you approach retirement, um, there's a bigger trust fall because you don't have that river of income floating in from one or both jobs. And so then you need more proof of preparation and proof of concept that can come up in more tense communications or just a need for like, "Hey, prove it to me," where then you may have a need to bring somebody in and discuss, um, things differently, because there's this approaching pivot and change coming, this approaching transition, that makes it important to know and understand things in a more collective manner. So if you happen to be the CFO, I want you to think through some of the signs that you may be carrying too much. That could be a lot of different things. Perhaps you're the only person in the family that has all the passwords. You're the only person who understands the budget, and you're really providing a reporting function to the rest of the family instead of a collaborative communication and decision making function. Financial tasks are just always kind of left at your plate, or you feel an unease or kind of resentment starting to pop up about the need for more money decisions. Um, so on the flip side, if you're the person who isn't that financial CFO, I want you to reflect too. Is there a lack of communication that you would like to change? Do you feel left out of the financial picture? Do you feel that you need to ask for permission to do things that you feel like as an independent adult it isn't appropriate to have to get permission for? All of these could be signs, if you're not that financial CFO, that you have a desire for more collaborative discussions, decisions, and communications. Another big one that I see is that there's the flip side of that resentment. If you're carrying all the burden, a resentment that mistakes you feel could have been made in the past that you didn't have the opportunity to understand your family was getting into. I've heard that a lot in families over the years. And also, frankly, sometimes in cases of divorces where there's uh, ongoing, kind of lament of how things had been handled in the past. And so finally, as we discuss, you know, some of the problems that may be there if there's a singular CFO, I want to talk to you about how to build a better financial team with or without a financial planner. So, one of the things that I strongly recommend, whether you're working with a financial professional or not, is to have times where you set aside to kind of get on the same page when it comes to money. At our company, we operate on the entrepreneur operating system. So I'm going to give you an agenda based on EOS, which is a great kind of business running system that might help you to run those financial meetings yourself. When you call the meeting to order, bring in, it might be just with yourself and you're, kind of doing a state of the affairs. Or if you're in a relationship, bring in your partner. If you have children who are more mature, contributing in the household, or a family member like a parent who is more involved in the household, you may even include them. And I would start that meeting with some positive reflections, talk about a great positive when it comes to money and a great positive just in general. It really sets a positive tone for the entire discussion. And then you can share some headlines collectively that you have when it comes to money in the family. Maybe someone got a promotion, benefits changed at work. Getting more serious about retirement. So just record those headlines or discuss them amongst yourselves. And then if you had a budget per se, or you had some goals that you wanted to be keeping track of in the family, you can report on those goals. So you could, for example, say, hey, here's how the budget worked for last month. We stayed in line. Energy use was good. I heard that with a family this week. Kept the bills under in a hot month. So if you have any key performance indicators or things you're tracking when it comes to money, accounts grew over 500,000 and we'd really set that as a goal. That would be great to reflect upon. And then you make space and time well, first you would also look at your to-do list from last month if you'd had a meeting prior and say, hey, did we get that job done? Did you add the beneficiary on your retirement account? So you'll always be keeping track of what each of you is accountable for and needs to do. And then there's a whole cohort and you spend most of the time in the meeting talking about issues. Some issues may be, I don't understand what's going on with our retirement planning. Can we talk through that? Let's identify, discuss, and solve for my lack of understanding. An issue may be we don't know who to make the guardian for our kids in our estate plan. How are we going to tackle that? Let's discuss discuss our options and find a path toward progress. So if you spend your time discussing those issues, eventually you'll come out of the meeting with a new to-do list, things that you're going to get done before the next meeting. I would suggest you have this type of meeting monthly. And then that's a great way to kind of stay on similar and the same pages without a financial professional. But then if you just find yourself getting into more elevated financial decisions, I think retirement is one of those. If money's piling up and you don't know where to put it, or you have persistent challenges with debt or, kind of family budget deficits, then it also may be time. Or again, if you're just like, the administrative burden of this job is too much for me, I need help implementing, and we don't have that natural assistant here in the family to help get things done, then that's a great time to discuss in your family meeting whether you should add a financial professional, or if you're working with a financial professional, but they are lacking in terms of, thinking about more than perhaps your accounts or your taxes. Maybe you need someone different that looks at the bigger financial picture, which is what I always recommend the role of a financial advisor or financial planner be. You need someone who is going to roll up their sleeves and get involved with more of your financial life. And that could be the role of someone like me, a certified financial planner. There's so many of us out there that do really terrific work. So bringing them in to the conversation so that you can reduce your administrative burden, focus more on your financial goals and results, and have a helper when it comes to both that decision fatigue, but also making pathways toward incremental progress for, being more prepared for financial outcomes. What do you guys think? I'd be curious to hear in comments, or if you send me an email. I'd love to hear your listener emails sent to melissa@pearlplanning.com. Are you the financial CFO? Is it someone else in the family? And does your family have the need to make some adjustments, make some changes when it comes to your financial well-being, communication cycle, or just who's in charge of that to-do list? I hope you enjoyed this episode. I would love to hear your thoughts, and thanks so much for listening. If you're enjoying our episodes, please let us know by leaving reviews, comments, or liking our podcast at the places that they're played. Thanks so much and have a great week.
Thank you for listening to the Women's Money Wisdom podcast. If you found value in this episode, the best way that you can support the podcast is to forward an episode to a friend or leave a review. Go to ProPlan.com and the podcast link to get all the resources and links mentioned. This presentation by Pearl Planning is intended for general information purposes only. No portion of this presentation serves as a receipt of or a substitute for personal investment advice from Pearl Planning or any other investment professional of your choosing. Copies of Pearl Planning's current written disclosure brochure and Form CRS discussing our advisory services and fees are available upon request or on our website platform at pearlplan.com. The information that we share is meant to educate and inspire, not serve as personalized financial advice. Everyone's situation is unique, so be sure to consult with your own financial professional for guidance that fits your life. And just so you know, The opinions shared in this podcast are Melissa's own and those of her guests. They don't necessarily represent any organizations with which Melissa is affiliated. For more important disclosures, please go to our webpage at pearlplan.com.